Monday ripped into Time magazine columnist Ian Bremmer for attributing a fake quote to him and proposed changing U.S. libel laws to better hold the media accountable. Ian Bremmer now admits that he made up a completely ludicrous quote, attributing it to me. "This is what's going on in the age of fake news," the president tweeted while in Japan. "People think they can say anything and get away with it. Really, the libel laws should be changed to hold fake news media accountable." In a now deleted tweet, Bremmer quoted the president stating that Kim Jong-un is smarter and would make a better president than sleepy Joe Biden. When pressed on the quote's veracity, Bremmer, also a professor at New York University, replied that the quote was plausible and represents the state of media and the Twitterverse today. "And yet kinda plausible," Bremmer tweet. "Especially on Twitter, where people automatically support whatever political position they have. That's the point." The Washington Examiner's Jerry Dunleavy captured screenshots of Bremmer's remarks. While in Tokyo, the president said he smiled when North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un called former Vice President and 2020 White House hopeful Joe Biden a swampman Joe and a low-IQ individual and worse. Bremmer eventually apologized for fabricating the quote, tweeting on Tuesday morning, "My tweet yesterday about Trump preferring Kim Jong-un to Biden as president was meant in jest. The president correctly quoted me as saying it was a completely ludicrous statement. I should have been clearer. My apologies." Freshman Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, DNY, on Sunday criticized the New York Times for its coverage of former Trump White House Communications Director Hope Hicks, accusing the paper of framing her decision to comply with a congressional subpoena as a lifetime drama. Hicks was subpoenaed last week to turn over documents and testify before the House Judiciary Committee as part of the panel's investigation into whether President Donald Trump and his associates obstructed justice and engaged in public corruption. In the article, titled "Hope Hicks Left the White House. Now She Must Decide Whether to Talk to Congress," reporter Maggie Haberman described Hicks's decision to comply with the request as an existential question. Hicks, along with other members of the president's circle, have until June 4 to submit all requested documents. The former Trump aide is expected to testify before House Judiciary Committee members on June 19. In the first of two tweets on the Times story, Ocasio-Cortez expressed frustration over Hicks' portrayal, accusing her of potentially breaking the law. "What gets me is news breaks that this woman is weighing committing a crime before Congress and it's getting framed by the NIT as some lifetime drama called Hope's Choice," she wrote. In the immediate aftermath of shootings, media routinely post menacing photos of people of color victims plus dredge up any questionable thing they'd ever done, the New York Democrat wrote in a follow-up tweet. But when Hope Hicks considers not complying with a subpoena, it's glamour shot time. Hicks' subpoena comes as Democrats debate how to respond to Trump's declaration that he will fight all of the subpoenas from Congress. More Democrats are calling for impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump after he blocked him from testifying last week. Nigel Farage has led the Brexit Party to victory while the establishment parties are left assessing the damage after their historic losses, with the Brexiteer declaring, "This is just the beginning." With almost all regions counted, the Brexit Party is in the clear lead after winning around one-third of the vote and projected to have gained 29 seats. In a distant second, the pro-Remain Liberal Democrats won 15 seats, while the New Change UK, CUK, established solely to stop Brexit, failed to gain a single seat. Never before in British politics has a party just 6 weeks old won a national election, Mr. Farage posted to Twitter Monday morning. If Britain does not leave the EU on October 31, these results will be repeated at a general election. History has been made. This is just the beginning. Media reports that the Tories suffered their worst election result in 2 centuries, dropping to just 9% of the vote and winning only 4 seats, losing 15, while the Labour Party is said to have had its worst election result in 100 years, having its presence in the European Parliament from 20 to just 10 seats. Speaking to Good Morning Britain on Monday morning, Mr. Farage warned that the establishment political parties will suffer in the next general election, scheduled for 2021. If they fail to take the UK out of the EU by October 31, saying, that date will become a bigger factor in people's minds as these 5 months go by. If we don't leave on the 31st of October, then the Brexit Party will go on to a general election and stun everybody there, too. The Brexit Party leader later told the BBC that his party would be ready for even an October snap general election, saying that it might not be easy, but that work starts this afternoon. Recent polling of Westminster voting intentions point to the Brexit Party being ahead of the Conservative Party and just 2 points away from taking the lead over Labour. Next month, the Brexit Party is challenging the establishment parties in the Peterborough by-election after the former Labour MP Fiona Onisinya was unseated following a recall petition. After winning, according to provisional results, 29 seats in the European Parliament, the Brexit Party could find itself gain its first seat in the British House of Parliament, the next step in Mr Farage's challenge to. Every year on Memorial Day at the cemetery at Belleau-Wood in France, the United States Marine Corps honors their fallen Marines who saved Paris during World War I from the German Army. On the other side of the Atlantic, at Arlington National Cemetery, the President of the United States lays a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier paying homage to America's fallen. The story of a salty gunnery sergeant links the two iconic events, a Marine who received 2 medals of honor and who had 2 names, including one he falsified, Ernest A. Jansen. Fix bayonets. The piercing shriek of Marine whistles and guttural bellows of "Follow me" drowned the order as the men of Jansen's 49th Company emerged from the woods. Dawn turned gray, and light bathed the flowing fields in front of the men. Dewy poppies, red as blood, dotted the waist-deep wheat. The Marines advanced in Civil War-style formations. As they gazed to their right and left, they viewed a panorama largely untouched by the Great War: sinuous hills of grain, clumps of trees, and a lush, verdant forest that served as a hunting preserve prior to the war. The dense kidney-shaped woods known as Bois de Boulogne occupied roughly 1 square mile of land where in June 1918 the U.S. Marine Corps and Army's 2nd Division would make an epic stand that halted one of the German Army's final great offensives of the war on Paris. 2 deep ravines cut through the trees, and massive boulders, some the size of a small building, littered the ground, making Belleau-Wood a natural fortress. A ridge 142 meters high, and therefore dubbed Hill 142, sprawled to the west. Jansen's company had to take and hold the hill from hundreds of battle-hardened Germans. Unbeknownst to the attackers, the Marines faced a battalion from the German 460th Regiment and a battalion of the 273rd Regiment, both under strength, including several machine gun companies. Jansen's story is captured in my national best-selling book, released this week in paperback, The Unknowns, the untold story of America's unknown soldier and World War I's most decorated heroes who brought him home. An angry red sun emerged just above the horizon in the cloudless blue sky behind the men's backs. Many turned their heads, some for the last time, to glimpse the blazing sunrise. At that instant, German shells and machine gun bullets ripped through the golden farmland, striking flesh and bone. As men began toppling like dominoes, Marine officers screamed, "Battle sight! Fire at will!" Their voices broke through the din of the battle and the anguished cries of wounded and dying men. Although vastly outnumbered by the Germans, Jansen's company and another Marine company miraculously seized Hill 142, but platoons with an original strength of around 60 men had withered to a pitiful handful of men led by a corporal. Most of his officers were dead. Reinforcements had not arrived. Moving from one position to another, Jansen ordered his men to dig in and set up strong points and outposts. The Marines scoured the hill for working German machine guns and belts of ammo. Making the most of his meager force, the Marines sent out a few men as scouts to keep an eye on their flanks. Then the heavy thud and thunder of German artillery shook the hill. Jansen knew the shelling signaled one thing. The German counterattack on Hill 142 had begun. The deafening blasts of grenades dashed their feverish efforts to bolster the anemic defenses on Hill 142. A blood-curdling scream emanated from the direction of Gunnery Sergeant Ernest Jansen's fighting position. A moment earlier, out of the corner of his eye, the 40-year-old Jansen had caught sight of more than a dozen Stallion helmets weaving through the underbrush in front of his foxhole. Jansen leapt into the infiltrating column of Germans, who had positioned 5 machine guns to annihilate the 49th Company. He impaled the belly of the first soldier and twisted the bayonet's keen blade, eviscerating him. Withdrawing his bayonet, the gunny lunged again, penetrating the torso of the next filled gray-clad soldier. Jansen's commanding officer Captain George W. Hamilton described the furious fight, shooting to beat the devil. Not more than 20 feet from us was a line of, about, 15 German helmets and 5 light machine guns just coming into action. All alone, Jansen sprang at the Germans. His war cry alerted the rest of his company who, adding their efforts to Jansen's heroics and baleful bayonet, killed or scattered the column, forcing them to flee and abandon their weapons. Severely wounded, the Marine veteran, with his daring charge, saved the 49th and the Hill. Had the Germans been able to set up their guns, they would have obliterated the 49th and retaken the Hill. For his bravery and disregard for his own safety, Body Bearer Gunnery Sergeant Ernest Jensen would become the first recipient of the Medal of Honor for the American Expeditionary Force, receiving both the Navy Medal of Honor and the Army Medal of Honor. Since Jensen served as a Marine in the Army's 2nd Division with the unit's 4th Brigade, consisting of 2 Marine regiments, both the Army and Navy could recommend him, a practice the services did away with shortly after World War I. The 2 medals were awarded to Charles Hoffman, Jensen's alias he used to enlist in the United States Marine Corps. Born August 17, 1878, in New York City, Jensen was nearing his 40th birthday in the summer of 1918. This made him an old man in the eyes of the men he led. He had originally enlisted in the U.S. Army under his real name, Ernest Jensen, and served for 10 years before going absent without leave, a criminal offense. He later had a change of heart and re-enlisted in the Marine Corps. To avoid detection, he altered his name to Charles Hoffman before joining the Marines. His ruse worked, and Jensen was a model Marine. His service record states that he was an expert rifleman and a sharpshooter. He had received a promotion to sergeant in 1914 and served aboard U.S. Navy ships during the lead-up to America's involvement in the Great War. In the first weeks of May 1917, Jensen and many of his fellow Marines, who had served as members of the Marine Guard on board the USS New Hampshire, formed the 49th Company, 250 men strong, at Norfolk, Virginia. In 1921, General John J. Pershing, the former commander of the American Expeditionary Forces in France, selected Jensen and 7 other men to bring home the remains of the unknown soldier. Pershing's body bearers, as they would be known, were some of the most daring, heavily decorated enlisted men to fight in World War I. Their histories uniquely span America's service branches and specialties, uncovering an untold story within a forgotten story of Army, Navy, Marines, Infantry, Cavalry, Field Artillery, Coast Artillery, Heavy Artillery, and Combat Engineers. Their ranks include a cowboy who relived the charge of the Light Brigade, an American Indian who heroically led the way by breaching mountains of barbed wire and captured scores of German prisoners, a salty New Englander who dueled a U-boat for hours in a fierce gunfight, a tough Bostonian who sacrificed his body to save his ship, artillerists who bombed and shelled their way to victory, and an indomitable hero blinded by gas who still managed to destroy 5 machine gun nests and kill 1 German soldier with a mighty swing from his pickaxe. The Unknowns tells their extraordinary stories. It weaves the larger narrative of America's involvement in the Great War through the previously untold history of the body bearers, culminating in the story of the unknown soldier who we honor every Memorial Day along with America's fallen from all of our conflicts. Howard Stern believes President Donald Trump should try psychotherapy because of the traumatic relationship he had with his late father, Fred Trump. Stern told CNN host Anderson Cooper in an interview that aired in full on Friday evening that psychotherapy has helped him and Trump would flourish if he gave it a try. From what I know of Donald and his relationship with his father, it sounds traumatic. It sounds like the father was very domineering. The father expected a lot of him. And the father, I don't know, there was military school. You know, you read these drips and drabs and you go wow, Stern said. I can assure you he's been traumatized because, Donald, his level of narcissism is so strong. He has trouble with empathy. We know that. And I wish he'd go into psychotherapy. Stern said there is no way Trump would ever do psychotherapy, but said he would be so proud of him if he did. I do not believe he's ever done psychotherapy, because he's demonstrating a lot of the behaviors that I recognize, Stern said. Stern also told Cooper that Trump asked him to endorse him at the 2016 Republican National Convention, and the two have not spoken since. Stern, who said he does not like making public speeches, turned him down. The SiriusXM host also said he could even be on the Supreme Court or have been appointed to anything he wanted in Trump's administration had he endorsed Trump, because Trump would have been so grateful that he was on Trump's team. The shock jock also said he thinks Trump enjoys winning the White House but does not actually like being